What if the sun, the source of our life, has a date to die, and that date is already known? Images of the erupting solar surface, colossal explosions spitting out particles at millions of kilometers per hour, reveal the violent beauty of a star that seems eternal, but which, in silence, has already begun the countdown. Every second, an absurd amount of energy is released, enough to power all of humanity for thousands of years. But what if that same energy is the harbinger of the end? Amid confidential files, documents sealed for decades, and images that supposedly should never have been leaked, there is a theory that has gained strength among scientists, conspiracy theorists, and even former NASA employees. The sun has already shown clear signs that it is dying, and the worst, they already know when it will happen. Sounds crazy. Could it be? But data collected on secret missions, hidden records from space observatories, and coded messages in internal reports raise a suspicion that is taking shape. The sun is unstable, and this instability is not a random event. Something is being monitored, something is being calculated, and maybe predicted. Have you heard of NASA's IRIS mission? Maybe not. Officially, it was created to study the upper layers of the sun, but leaked documents suggest that the objectives were much deeper. To understand, because the sun has been emitting non-standard energy pulses, signals that scientists avoid commenting on in public, but that internally they call solar beats, as if our star's heart was at failing. And while humanity continues to look at social media, distracted by everyday banalities, NASA's supercomputers continue running silent simulations, projections of what would happen if the sun collapsed earlier than expected, collapsed during our era. But why isn't this information available to everyone? Why is it that when we try to access specific solar reports, we come across censored sections, blank pages, or technical terms, so complex that they hide more than they reveal? The truth may be behind words like stellar maintenance, heliomagnetic cycle fluctuation, and plasma anomalies. Terms that, for the majority, say nothing, but for those who know what to look for, represent clear signs that something is about to happen, something catastrophic, something irreversible. What if right now NASA is keeping all of this secret to avoid global panic? After all, how would the world react if it knew that the end of our source of life had a date set? This video will show you the clues that NASA doesn't want you to see it. Let's cross-reference confidential information, disturbing theories, and scientific data that could reveal the biggest secret of the century. And if you think this is just another conspiracy, wait until you see the leaked images. Get ready. The sundial is ticking. But first of all, let's go back to the mission that raised the first suspicions, and the report that was never officially published. The mission was called Solar Sentinel, and officially it doesn't even exist on the NASA website. No articles, no press releases, no mentions at conferences. However, in closed forums of former agency scientists, one name appears frequently, almost like a code: Sentinel-Z. According to leaks, this secret operation would have recorded an unprecedented phenomenon: the sudden slowdown of the solar cycle in one of the most unstable regions of the star's surface. What does this mean? Imagine a gigantic engine, pulsing for billions of years, suddenly sputtering, failing for microseconds, and no one being allowed to talk about it. Why? There are those who say that NASA has already identified a possible date for the partial collapse of the sun, and that at this moment it is studying silent alternatives for interplanetary migration, a space escape plan that it would only include part of humanity. Yes, you read that right. And now think, why is there so much private investment in space flights in recent years? Why are billionaires, governments, and companies fighting for land on Mars as if they were playing galactic chess? Maybe because they know. Perhaps they are already preparing. Now answer me in the comments. Do you believe we are being kept in the dark? Do you think there is a hidden plan afoot? Or could this all just be a very convenient cosmic coincidence? Comment with your theory. Here, no one will censor you. Here, we not only question, we exposes. Because when it comes to the sun, time is running out. And anyone who stays until the end of this video will understand why the truth about the end of our star could change everything we know about the fate of humanity. And if all this makes sense to you, if you want to continue on this journey with us, subscribe to the channel now. Here, the truth is not disguised, it is exposed. And in the next section, we will dive into the most recent events that can prove all of this. Traditional science asserts with almost arrogant confidence that the sun will live for billions of years. They say that it is halfway through its life cycle, that it is now experiencing its stable phase as a G-class star, and that in about 5 billion years, it will expand, swallow the inner planets and turn into a red giant. It's what you find in any physics book or in any basic astronomy class. But what if this timeline is being purposely manipulated? What if the official narrative is nothing more than a smokescreen to calm the masses, while something much bigger and much more imminent is being carefully hidden? Recent reports, obtained by independent sources linked to space agencies and international universities, show intriguing changes in the behavior of the sun. The solar cycle, which lasts an average of 11 years, is shortening. In 2020, observatories captured an unusual number of coronal mass ejections during a period that should have been of low activity. Furthermore, the solar magnetic field has been showing abrupt fluctuations, as if the star was losing its rhythm. The independent scientists who spoke out on this were quickly discredited, their publications archived, their names removed from academic forums. It's as if someone is controlling the flow of information, deciding what you can and cannot know. Doesn't that sound familiar? Data manipulation, evidence hiding, and the good old NASA, we will not comment. And now, an uncomfortable question arises. Why has the agency been silencing missions that were previously public? Why did projects like SOHO and SDO start to restrict access to real-time images? What is being captured out there that they don't want you to see? If you also feel that there is something wrong, something out of the curve, leave a like now, because it shows that you are also connected with this feeling that we are not told everything. And look, I really want to know your opinion, and it's exactly from here that everything starts to get even stranger. While official speeches continue to push that comfortable narrative that everything is under control, the truth that slips through the cracks behind the scenes is quite different, and anyone who is paying attention has already noticed this. Did you know that there are secret solar telescopes that are not disclosed to the public and that operate far from the press's radar? Highly technological equipment maintained in remote regions such as the South Pole, in geostationary orbit, and even in hidden mobile stations, all with a single objective: to continuously observe the core of the sun. Why so much effort to study something that, according to NASA itself, will only die in billions of years? Missions like SOHO and the SDO, which until recently transmitted real-time images of solar activity, began to show suspicious glitches, transmissions that crash exactly at the moment of a coronal mass ejection, records that mysteriously disappear, video, fragments that return to the air with inexplicably cut sections. It's as if someone is controlling what we can and cannot see. And the most frightening thing, technical failures always coincide with peaks in solar activity, as if the Earth was being protected from the information itself. And this isn't just happening once, they are standards. Repeat. And every time questions arise, the answer is always vague. System maintenance, transmission problems, technical updates. Curious how these problems only appear at critical moments, isn't it? Now, couple this with the fact that secret satellites like those of the United States Space Force are positioned specifically to monitor fluctuations in the solar core, not on the surface, not in the external magnetic field, but in core, something that, according to classical theory, should only be monitored on scales of millions of years. So why all the rush? Unofficial reports indicate that the sun's core is behaving anomalously. Oscillations in its internal rotation, changes in solar neutrino fluxes, particles that pass through everything including the Earth, and sudden changes in emission patterns. It's as if something is unbalancing our star's heart. And once again, NASA remains silent. When confronted about this data, the standard response is, there is nothing out of the ordinary. But if there really isn't one, why create such advanced monitoring systems with military satellites, networks of secret observatories and protocols for blocking public images? Think with me. The sun has always been the greatest constant in our existence. And now, little by little, this constant is beginning to show cracks, and the only ones who have the data to fully understand this refuse to share. Some say that, behind the scenes, some scientists are already working on early collapse scenarios, silent simulations of catastrophic events that could transform Earth into an uninhabitable planet in a matter of weeks, perhaps days, if certain variables are confirmed. But you won't hear it on the news, and you certainly won't see this information on NASA's social media. It is at this point that theories begin to stop being just speculation. There is a movement, there is selective censorship, there is a line of study being kept away from public knowledge, and everything points to an unsettling possibility. The sun may be emitting clear signals of dangerous instability, and NASA has known this for a long time. Now, I want to see your view on all of this. Comment below if you believe there is a real reason to hide this information. You can use phrases like, "The truth is at the core," or "NASA's silence says it all." This helps drive our content further and shows that you are part of this community of awakened minds. What if everything we are revealing here is not just a distant possibility, but a real scenario in the making? The death of the sun, or at least a sudden change in its behavior, would not need to happen in a cinematic way. With an explosion visible to the naked eye, sudden instability would be enough, an imbalance at its core, a supersolar storm, and planet Earth would plunge into absolute chaos. For many people, imagining the death of the sun means imagining total darkness, freezing and the end of life in billions of years. But you don't have to wait for all this to happen for the effects to start being felt. In fact, we have already experienced small samples of what this would cause, and perhaps we didn't even realize it. Have you heard of the Carrington event? In 1859, a powerful solar storm hit Earth. At that time, the impacts were limited because we lived in a world without internet, satellites, or an interconnected electrical grid like we have today. But even so, telegraphs were shorted out, poles caught fire, and operators were shocked just by touching equipment. Now imagine this same phenomenon happening today, but with even greater power, like those that NASA's secret satellites have already captured, but never publicly disclosed. If this scenario made you uneasy, leave a like now. This shows that you are aware and attentive to this information that almost no one dares to comment on. What would happen? Global blackout, total. Within minutes, communications satellites would be fried, electrical grids would collapse, banks, hospitals, governments, everything is paralyzed, planes would crash, GPS navigation would be unusable, transport, food and water would be disrupted, the internet would disappear, and with it all the digital dependence that the world has built in recent decades. And that's just the beginning. Now think about the chain consequences. No communication, no energy, no control. A massive solar EMP, an electromagnetic pulse of solar origin, could literally reset modern civilization without needing to blow up the sun, without needing it to die. Just a hiccup of instability. And NASA knows this. Simulations, carried out by independent institutes, indicate that a solar storm of the X40 type, much larger than the Carrington event, would have the potential to cause up to $50 trillion in immediate damage and would take years to correct. And this type of superstorm is not a what-if, she is expected. No, U.S. Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration itself has already stated that we are entering a more aggressive solar cycle. And yet, why isn't the general population being alerted? Why aren't governments taking emergency measures? What are they waiting for? The answer may be uncomfortable, but it makes sense. They already know they can't help it. They know something bigger is coming and prefer to keep quiet to avoid mass panic. After all, what would you do if you knew your world could be shut down by an invisible storm at any moment? And worse, how would you react if you discovered that some were already prepared, with bunkers, protected technologies, and orbital escape plans, while you remained in the dark? This is true silent panic, the invisible climate tension that hangs over the planet. We don't see the danger, but we are connected to it. Every device, every network, every satellite in the sky, it all depends on the sun. And it right now is sending us signals. Do you feel this too? And if you want to continue on this journey of revelations, connect with a community that does not accept living in the dark, subscribe to the channel now. Because what comes next goes even deeper. And now we enter one of the most delicate and at the same time most disturbing parts of this entire investigation. Because no matter how hard you try to keep everything hidden beneath the surface, some documents get leaked. Some internal communications escape. And it is precisely in these hidden fragments in these files with restricted access that we begin to piece together the puzzle of what could really be happening with the sun and behind the scenes at NASA. Among the terms that draw the most attention in these documents is the expression solar phase collapse. Translation: solar phase collapse. This term is not found in conventional astrophysics books or in public reports. It appears exclusively in communications between high-level research teams working at centers like the Goddard Space Flight Center and the Langley Research Center itself, places known for operating classified research. Solar phase collapse describes a supposed critical condition of the solar core in which the star's internal cycles lose their natural cadence, generating unregulated energy pulses and large-scale electromagnetic instability. And most worryingly, there is direct mention that this behavior can become irreversible. Another document, stamped classified internal circulation only, mentions the creation of a committee called Zeta 9, responsible for developing preventive orbital evacuation protocols in case of accelerated solar collapse. Evacuation, orbital, preventive. This means that, at least in theory, there are already plans in place to remove strategic groups from Earth, likely political, scientific, and military elites, if certain measurements cross critical thresholds. In another file dated 2021, there are maps of shadow zones designed to be temporarily safe areas in the event of an extreme solar storm. These maps were detected in encrypted folders within a server linked to the National Solar Observatory. Among the mapped zones were specific regions of the Southern Hemisphere, far from dense urban areas and close to aerospace control centers. Coincidence? Or is it part of a contingency plan that the majority of the population will never have access to? In addition to the documents, there are testimonies, former NASA employees, retired scientists, and even third-party analysts from companies hired to operate satellites and analyze data from solar observatories. Many reported extremely unusual situations. One of them, anonymously, declared that with each new solar cycle, internal alerts come earlier and more intense, but we are instructed not to create external fuss. Another, who worked directly with the analysis of solar neutrino fluxes, stated that he was removed after questioning patterns incompatible with the current model of the stable sun. The word irreversible scenario appears frequently in these reports, as if, at some level, agencies have already accepted that we are facing something that cannot be contained, only monitored, narratively controlled, and prepared behind the scenes to mitigate the impact on who matters, and that who matters is not us. It's not the public. Now answer me honestly, do you really think all this would be done if the sun were just a quiet star with billions of years to go? Do you think documents with this level of classification, safety zone maps, evacuation plans, and terms like solar collapse would be being discussed among elite scientists, just in case? And tell me in the comments what you think about all this. Comment below with phrases like, "They already knew," or "Solar collapse is real." Let's build together this space for discussion where the truth is not silenced. While the majority of the population debates global warming, rising sea levels, and household recycling, there is a silent but extremely active elite who seem to be preparing for something much bigger, something few are willing to consider: the end of electricity. Literally, we are not just talking about ecological collapse, but a scenario in which the source of life, the sun, partially or completely collapses, making the Earth uninhabitable or technologically vulnerable. And while we are distracted by headlines about climate change, a global survival operation may already be underway. Let's start underground. It is no longer a secret that several countries, mainly powers such as the United States, Russia, and China, have been building monumental underground structures. We are not talking about simple nuclear shelters, but about true underground cities with the capacity to keep thousands of people alive for decades. Infrastructures with own energy production, greenhouses for indoor cultivation, atmospheric analysis laboratories, and air and water purification systems. The curious thing is that many of these projects were initially justified as precautions against extreme events, but the real purpose goes far beyond that. When analyzing maps of supposed safe zones, those leaked from confidential files linked to solar research centers, many coincide exactly with the locations of these underground bases, and it doesn't stop there. Have you ever stopped to think about the true objective behind missions to Mars? Officially, missions like Artemis are presented as the first step towards the colonization of space, to inspire a new generation. But behind the curtains, there are records of tests involving experimental terraforming, including the release of extremophile bacteria capable of slowly altering the atmospheric composition of hostile environments. The name of it, Planetary Migration Simulation. practical translation, Space Exile Plan. And there's more. A document linked to the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, mentions the development of an artificial atmospheric shield. The proposal would be to create an electromagnetic barrier around specific areas of the planet with technology derived from research initiated in secret projects in the 80s. The main function of this shield: protect against extreme solar radiation and electromagnetic pulses caused by solar superstorms. Too much of a coincidence, right? Now think with me. If they are creating shields, underground shelters, and preparing other planets, why would they do all this if the sun still has billions of years of peaceful life left? The answer begins to emerge behind these silent movements, and everything points to a single destination: selective survival. As the world continues to grapple with the consequences of a warming planet, perhaps the elite are fighting for something much darker: survive final cooling. So now that everything has been exposed, the question that can no longer be ignored is, what if everything we experience now is part of a plan to keep us calm until the inevitable happens? The silent movement, the missed alerts, the secret structures being built while we are distracted by minor problems. It all points to a truth buried under tons of control and silence. They know they prepared, and maybe they won't tell us in time. If you believe that NASA already knows when the sun will die, if you felt deep down that all of this is connected, comment below. The truth is in the sun. This will show that you are paying attention, that you are part of the minority that sees beyond the official versions. Every comment is a sign of resistance against silence. And if this truth hit you like a shock, leave a like now. It's your way of keeping that content alive and making sure more people wake up. And of course, if you want to continue accessing content that challenges what has been said so far, subscribe to the channel right now, because the next revelation will activate triggers you never imagined.